Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Joint Audit and Standards Committee. I am Councillor Bryn Hurren and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. And please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. I would like to remind everyone present this morning that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Introductions today. The officers attending the meeting are John Snell, Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, Risk and Data Protection. Sue Palmer, Senior Finance Business Partner, Capital and Treasury, and Mandy Smith, who is the Governance Officer today. We have had apologies from Melissa Evans. Can I now move to the agenda, please? Apologies for absence and any substitutions, Mandy?
We have received apologies from Councillor Ayres and Councillor Caston, and there are no substitutions today.
Okay, thank you for that. Any declarations of interest for today's meeting? We're all clear, thank you. Moving to the agenda, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting. We have got two actually to do. Held on the 29th of November first, that one. I was present for that one, so I'm quite willing to propose that. And are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes first, for those who were here? Okay, fine. Well, I'll ask for a seconder, please. Dave, thank you. Councillor Muller. And I'll now ask Mandy, the Governance Officer, to conduct the votes.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress on the app. Can I take your vote verbally?
Yes, I'll
abstain. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair. That's 4 votes for and 3 abstentions, so that's passed.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mandy. Item 4, the minutes again, JAC 2130. Confirmation of the minutes on the 28th of March, 22. Not quite as long ago, but yeah, Councillor Muller is proposing. And a seconder from the floor, somebody who was here. Councillor Norris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Norman?
Yes,
thank you. Chair, that again is 4 votes for and 3 abstentions, so that's passed as well.
Thank you very much. And notification of petitions, do we have any?
No petitions received.
Questions from the public?
No questions received.
Questions by councillors?
No questions received.
We are getting an easy ride today. We move to the beef of the agenda, JAC 2131, held over from last time, the annual internal audit report. Can I invite John Snell to present, please? Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Right, okay, the purpose of the report in front of you is to provide you with details of the work undertaken by Internal Audit for the year 21-22, which is required under the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards. The report also details the view of other corporate activities which are supported by the work of the team during last year. There are a number of sort of key messages that I'd like to get across to you to draw out and tease out from the report, and these include excuse me, the demand on internal audit services to provide assurance, support and advice continues as the councils continue to reshape and transform its services. In line with the Council's Internal Audit Charter, the work has been conducted to ensure that it delivers against the public sector internal audit standards, and the requirement for me as the head of audit to provide an annual audit year-end opinion. So what does our work cover? Just running down some of the bits there. So in terms of work, it's looking at the governance processes, and some of that will be more detailed in the next paper on the annual governance statement. The monitoring arrangements across the organisation when we undertake the audits that we do. Some ethical values in terms of behaviours, cultures of the organisation. Information governance in terms of data quality and data management. Risk management and fraud management. The work of the internal audit continues to be resourced from existing staff and from an external audit partner. This arrangement allows a direct internal provision plus the commissioning of external skills and capacity, and provides a blend of resources from within the councils and from the external partner itself. The option of working with an external partner currently makes good sense, and it's something that is supported by our SLT, our senior leadership team, and that management still remains control over the internal audit function, while at the same time leveraging the internal audit resources of the third-party provider. It provides us access to valuable and diverse specialised skills as needed, and achieves a level of flexibility, I think, which can be critical in effectively dealing with a range of operational issues that we face. Moving through on to the Appendix A, which is the main body of the report itself, you'll see that the work undertaken, that of the completed audits, only one returned an audit opinion on the control environment of limited assurance at the end of the last financial year. And again, in line with our own internal audit procedures, this audit will be followed up and the outcome reported back to this committee as part of the midterm report later in the year. The full status of this report is detailed in section 6 below, with all the other audits undertaken during last year. As well as conducting audit reviews, internal audit had significant involvement within a period in a variety of different audit activities, and these include leading on the production of the annual governance statement, which I'll present after this report, attending the Council Statutory Officers Working Group, and that's to provide a professional determination on governance matters as they arise, and as one of the two Council's Deputy Monitoring Officers at the time, supporting Emily as the Monitoring Officer with specific duties to ensure that the Councils, their officers and elected members maintain the highest standards and of conduct in all that they do. Full details of the anti-fraud and corruption work undertaken during the year is annually reported to this committee, and the last report was presented to you in March of this year. Until recently, internal audit had been part of the Council's tactical management team responsible for managing emerging risks and directing resources to help ensure critical services are maintained across the two districts. Our professional insight is now called upon when required. A member of my team continues to support the Council's business sale by providing assurance over the administrating of the various business grants schemes announced by central government, and more recently the energy rebate payment. That work includes ensuring that the prescribed criteria in terms of eligibility is correctly applied and meets the managing issues around fraud, and also available digital tools that we use to help identify potential fraud through Spotlight and the National Fraud Initiation platform. In terms of performance through the year, the completed customer surveys, which our audit clients can complete, continue to express a high level of satisfaction with the service delivered, with 80% of the completed audits being rated as either excellent and 20% being rated as good. You'll see from the statistics there within the report that only 50% of the customer surveys were returned. And that's something, as the head of audit, I'm trying to increase. What normally happens is at the end of any audit, a customer service is provided to the key contact of that audit. They complete it, and obviously then I monitor the feedback given. In terms of chase-up, our section would only probably email once as a chase-up, and we don't follow up further. But what I will try and do, certainly for this financial year, is ensure that that 50% is increased to a higher return rate. You also see that internal audit continues to perform well against the agreed key performance indicators. You'll see from the table that the reduced percentage of the audit plan delivered is a result of management's requests for internal audit's continual support to provide a level of assurance to the business cell responsible for the administration of business grants and payments, which I mentioned earlier. In terms of the annual audit opinion, as head of audit, I am satisfied that sufficient assurance work has been carried out, which will allow me to form a reasonable conclusion on the adequacy and effectiveness of each of the Council's internal control environment. It is therefore my opinion that the Council's framework of governance, risk management and internal controls are deemed to be reasonable assurance, i.e. this means that the system, process or activity achieves its objectives safely and effectively. However, with any of the audits that we undertake, there will be some control weaknesses, and these are reported where they're not operating effectively. However, what I would say is those weaknesses that have been identified through the audit review, we work very closely with senior management to ensure that appropriate corrective actions are taken and a timescale for improvement is implemented. There are no audit-related issues that currently need to be brought to your attention through this report, so I'm happy to take any questions at this stage.
Thank you, John. Just before I open the floor for questions, I note your remarks when you chase up for sort of opinion. That's all from people within this organisation, I presume, or mainly from people within this organisation. Is that correct?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, that's taken from the internal audit plan that you actually approve at the beginning, and again, that's was also subject to consultation with the SLT as well. So this report is based on that plan. As I said, there's a couple of audits that were deferred, and that's a result of the work, continual work that we've been asked to do on those business grants.
Yes. Okay. The point I make is it ought to be reasonably easy to get the number of answers up a bit, I would have thought. You know, it's not as if you're appealing to people from outside the organisation. It's mainly within, so...
Yeah, I mean, I could take a view in the sense that if we don't get a response,
yes,
it's a positive response, if that makes sense. But certainly in terms of the openness and things that we can learn from the internal audit review process, I'm keen, as I say, to increase that 50%.
Yeah, it would be nice to know. Okay, I'll open this paper up now to questions from councillors before we go to debate. Who wants to be first? Councillor Norris, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Page 26, Planning Enforcement, Limited Assurance Follow-up Audit Plan for Completion at end of July 2022-23. Perhaps I missed this. My hearing is not as good as it used to be. Could you give us an update on what the current position is on this? Because this is one of the areas that the public are more concerned with, I think, than anything else. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We're at the point where we're having discussions with Phil Isabel, who has responsibility for enforcement action. So we've undertaken the work, and there are a couple of points for clarification more than anything that we just need to take up with Phil and his team before we issue the report as a draft to get management responses and a final, but it's actually imminent. But obviously I'll report that back at midterm report, which is sort of November time. But yes, that report is actually imminent, Councillor.
Councillor Reborn?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for your report. I've got quite a few questions. Shall I just do 3 up first? Hopefully they're quick. Thanks. On page, sorry, I've got notes on my old one as well as the new one. So page, I think it's 23 of the new papers, contract management. It says to consider social value in the audit, but my understanding is we don't actually measure social value at the moment, so I just wondered how that is how you assess that. Secondly, on corporate procurement, on the budgetary control, on pages sort of 23 to 24, there isn't an opinion given in the final column, so I just wondered what, I think a lot of us have had concerns about the budgetary process, so I just wanted to get what assurance you were giving or not, or whether it's further work as it says there. And just my third one, in risk management, which is page 24, is there going to be any more resource on risk management? I've got a couple more questions, Chair, but if I come back after other people have asked, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate 3 questions at a time because my brain won't cope with anything else. In terms of the first question around social value at the time when we first started looking at this several years ago was sort of a heightened awareness in terms of ensuring where we were going out to contract. We were looking at perhaps looking at more localised contracts that we could do to enhance the economic environment around the 2 district councils in terms of social values, in terms of how we were going to apply those. But you're quite right, I think there's a sort of slight change in emphasis on social value, that it's not so easy to actually measure. And that's something that we are working with Melissa, who's unfortunately not here, and the C&P team, which is the Commissioning and Procurement team, and how they actually address those issues and whether it's something that from an internal audit point of view, and also from you as members' point of view, whether you'd like assurances around that aspect of social value and how we could apply it, certainly with the existing contract and moving forward with new contracts. The second point about budget control, where there's no opinion, this piece of work was discussed with the then Section 151 officer, Catherine Steele, also with Melissa, and what they wanted was there was a recognition that the budget control processes weren't robust or as strong as they might be. So they wanted a consultation piece of work around the whole process. So it wasn't necessarily would have been in the audit plan, but it was something that was requested by Catherine, supported by Melissa. So instead of giving an audit opinion, we've deemed it to be consultative. So our external audit provider who have a wealth of knowledge across a wide breadth of clients were brought in to undertake that work, which was well received by Catherine and also Melissa. And as you can see within the report, we're going to be doing some further work with Melissa to help further support that whole budgetary process. And Sue is here as well, but Sue is one of the key people that we were speaking to as part of that whole process as well. And I think your last question was around risk management. And as you'll see that my role has changed in the sense that within the report you'll see that we have now a dedicated team which encompasses performance, risk, insight and policy, and that's headed up by a new interim corporate manager. And one of the recommendations that TIR, the external audit provider, said is that effectively we didn't have enough resources within my own team. That was then decided, or senior management decided to move risk management across to this new area, and I understand they've just appointed a full-time risk management officer. Unfortunately, I never had that luxury when it was with me, so I'm quite envious in many ways, but hopefully that gives you some assurance that there's a dedicated officer at a higher grade as well that will be undertaking that work.
Thank you very much for that. Just on the budgetary control, will you be then following that up, and will we then see that again? And if I may just ask another question, then I'll wait for others. On the housing, health and safety follow-up, just who is monitoring the time frame for improvements there? Because in terms of the concerns that are raised. Thank you.
Budgetary process, what we don't want to do is come into an area or a period where it's extremely busy, but you will obviously see the outcome of that. And I think the next question you were talking about, so please bear with me a second, on the housing.
Bottom of page 27.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Okay, so you can see that it came out, the audit opinion was reasonable assurance. We were working closely at the time with Gavin, who has since departed across to Ipswich Borough. My understanding is that's now left in the capable hands of those corporate managers. And I think I'm right in saying that Emily Atack is acting as head of housing in the interim until that's been formally filled. So those areas which are very important in terms of compliance are being dealt with and implemented by those corporate managers responsible under those compliance checks.
Other questions from the floor? But just to give you a break, Rachel, I was going to ask a question, John, on the climate change sort of role. Now you've been doing that for a while. Is it getting more robust as time goes on, and it seems to be ever more urgent, or is it something you do sort of on a yearly basis and then just leave it? I think you're going to say not. It's a rolling program, isn't it? But I think I just want reassurance that we are taking it seriously, really. That's probably what the basis of my question is.
Yeah, certainly. And again, unfortunately, Cass has departed, but Cass Clements, who was the director responsible for climate change, again, it was a piece of work that our external provider provided, in the sense that climate change is quite a specialised area, even for auditors. It's relatively a new area, and we didn't have the internal audit experience, hence why we've moved to the external provider to give that overview. And again, it came out as reasonable assurance, and when you look at the findings, there's quite a bit of sort of areas for sort of improvement, but not significant areas that would cause concern. But there was also some very good practice that was identified, particularly with the environmental delivery plan and also the carbon reduction plan. So it's something that is never off our agenda. It's not in the plan to do this year, but it would be something that I would think we would be revisiting from an audit purpose, just to see how that plan has developed and whether we're going to meet those milestones, particularly as we move forward to 2023. So.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for that, John. Back to you, Councillor Reborn.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a kind of, I apologise, I haven't been on this committee for a while, so new back onto it, but just in paragraph 4.4, when you look at what the work has to cover, you know, it talks about governance processes, monitoring, and it says ethics, and I just wondered kind of how that is looked at, and it's such a nefarious kind of area. Is there a particular framework or something that helps you and the team look at that, or just to give me some, or give us, as it were, some understanding on that? Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for, it's a very good question in terms of ethical, because ethics generally is a huge, wide, encompassing area. It's a bit like governance. What does governance mean? What does ethics mean? So what we tend to do with big areas like that is have a look at more of a holistic approach. So when we're undertaking audits, we might look at the behaviours of individuals, officers, key officers, and also the cultures. So we have our 5 values that we're all signed up to. Are they demonstrating that within their work and how they conduct themselves, either with yourselves, either with external bodies, and also within the teams themselves? One of the ethical standards that we're looking at for this year, for example, is around gifts and hospitality. So what's the culture within the organisation? Do we discourage it? Do we encourage it? How is it reported? How is it recorded? And the same with hospitality as well. It's a big area, not in national politics as well as small politics. So they're the types of areas that we would look at and focus on for a specific piece of work. There is a school of thought as well, and I've been mulling this one over about doing an ethical audit, which might be challenging. So we're looking at all sorts of areas. So if we're taking the Constitution, how do we apply the Constitution? How do we monitor it? How do we report on breaches of that Constitution? Is everybody aware of the risk management processes that are in place? Around counter-fraud aspects, whistleblowing. So that's all to do with behaviours and the culture of the organisation. And what was in the back of my mind, although I need to sort of refine it slightly, is as we're moving forward, is actually to do perhaps a survey to raise awareness and what do people understand? Do they know where the risk management strategy is, for example? Do they know about whistleblowing? Do they know about anti-fraud and corruption arrangements? Do they know about the gifts and hospitality? So if they don't, then we need to actually educate members of staff and dare I say, members as well. So we're all signed up to it, so it's not just officers. So that's something that I will probably be looking at more closely next year.
Thank you very much.
It is, because I sometimes wonder how organisations seem to go completely off the rails sometimes. It seems to be systemic, and that's very, very reassuring, John, that it's not likely to happen here. Other members? Any points before we go to debate? Questions? No? Well, we'll move to debate. I've read this through twice now, once in July and once now, and there's a few minor changes, but I'm happy, we'll be happy to propose this if we get that. But any into debate, any other points? Councillor Muller.
Yes, I'd like to thank John for his report. It's an excellent report. And I'm more than happy to, if you're happy to propose the recommendation of 3.1, then I'm happy to second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reborn.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, no, I think a huge amount of work goes in here, so thanks to John and the team. But I do think, I know I've raised the points about social value and ethics, and I do think those are areas where we need to really understand it. And if there are frameworks somewhere that we can borrow, let's not reinvent the wheel, as to see how we're performing for our residents, I think that would be really helpful, but I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other points to be raised in debate? No, we have Austin. Councillor Davis.
I was just to also thank John for that and make the observation that whistleblowing is a way of helping check the health of the organisation and giving people that reassuring feel that if they are not comfortable with something, they can easily raise it without fear of persecution. So I think that work would be really invaluable. But thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. I meant to welcome you to the meeting because you had a false start last time, didn't you? But welcome to the meeting and welcome to Joint Audit and Standards Committee. Any other points before we move to the vote? No, well, if I'll ask the governance officer to conduct the vote. We have a proposer and a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress on the app. Councillor Norman, can I take a vote? Thank you. Chair, that's 8 votes for, so that's unanimous.
Thank you, members. And we move now to JAC 2133, the Annual Treasury Management Report. Once again, over to you, John, please.
Sorry, was that the annual governance report?
I beg your pardon, the Annual Governance Statement, yes. My apologies, 2132.
Went to a blind panic there.
Just checking you're awake, but you obviously are.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hugely important report. So it reviews each council's corporate governance arrangements during 21-22, and this is required by the accounts and audit regulations, and is presented as a joint statement to reflect the governance arrangements in place across both councils. Furthermore, it provides an insight looking ahead for this year and the key challenges facing both councils moving forward, as well as addressing those challenges identified during 2021 and any resultant actions taken from that. This committee has a huge responsibility for being satisfied that the statement properly reflects the governance arrangements in place as they see it and as experienced it as councillors. Baber and Mid-Suffolk have adopted the local code of corporate governance that sets out a commitment to corporate governance generally and summarises the governance arrangements and activities in place to which it's accountable and engages with its communities. The local code is consistent with the principles of the Sit for Solace framework delivering good governance in local government, which was first set out in 2016. The statement explains how the councils have complied with the local code and also meets those requirements, as mentioned before, from the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. To reflect the code, the AGS includes assurance statements from various officers, including myself, which represent the oversight functions, and again, which helps forms this opinion for my previous report. The senior leadership have also had the opportunity to view and comment on the AGS as part of the review process, and their comments have been incorporated within the statement that you have before you today. The AGS provides an assurance of the effectiveness of the council systems on internal control. The arrangements continue to be regarded as fit for purpose in accordance with the governance framework. There have been no governance issues identified during the year which are considered significant in relation to each council's overall governance framework. The COVID-19 emergency has meant that the council's had to make a number of changes to its governance arrangements during the years. The governance statements provides assurance to that effect over the governance arrangements that have been in place during 21-22, but it also identifies through the assurance statements from officers or issues and changes that have been implemented in response to this emergency. Although the council's arrangements are still under pressure, they are less so as we're coping much more with COVID. So it's felt that the systems are sufficient in terms of how robust the governance arrangements and that framework is in place currently. And again, I'm happy to take any questions as a result.
Right, thank you, John. Before we move to questions, I think if you look at the intro, page 40, 4.2, it just sums up everything that we do, doesn't it? We charge the governance is about the council ensuring that we're doing the right thing in the right way for the right people and in a timely, inclusive, open, honest and accountable manner. It just covers everything that we do in this whole council, so it just shows you how serious we should all take this, right from beginning to end, really. So very, very important committee and a very, very important statement. So questions, please, from the floor. Councillor Ebon, that's a good job you're here, isn't it?
Well, you know, Chair, our role is to kind of, you know, listen to the team that are putting these together and actually ask questions to ensure it's all robust. So hopefully I'm doing that. But anyway, I've got a sort of series of questions, but they're mainly around how we budget. For example, on you know, I know there's been issues in the past, and again, it's identified here about audit, as in the financial audit, and who audits the council, and there have been a lot of issues with that in the past, and I sort of was wondering where we were at, whether we were just going to stay with that, so I'm looking at Sue a bit more here, or whether we're thinking of, you know, changing that, or although I know it's an issue with councils across England. And with regards to kind of, I've got sort of two areas of issues. There's one to do with budgets. For example, on page 82, we talk about explaining budget setting. And I take that to be explaining it to the community and to residents. And I don't really see much of that, so I just wonder what the evidence of that is, apart from when people finally get a council tax bill. But that's beyond budget setting. That is once the budget is approved. So, you know, how are we showing about explaining budget setting to our community? And with regards to the information that's available internally, the reference to sort of council priorities and so forth, I think that's page 68. Connect isn't up to date. Our intranet is not up to date. So how can we be assured that all of the information, and I think we've all come to the point where we go to the website on behalf of a resident or whatever else, or for our own benefit, and find things that are just, you know, not 100% up to date. So how do we ensure that that is the case? And finally, Chair, if I may, just it's virtually the last paragraph on page 83. We talk about investing in communications, but we don't ever seem to kind of talk to our residents about things that didn't go so well, and therefore what we're going to do to change those. We only seem to talk about successes. So, and I think that is a key part of all of this, because we've got to be open and honest. So just to get the view on that. Thank you, Chair.
For the first point, I'm looking at Sue in obviously Melissa's absence regarding the budget setting process and how we articulate that to our community. I don't know if Sue can answer that. No? Right. I think Councillor, it's a very good point. I think what I'll do in obviously Melissa's absence, and if you as a committee are happy, it would be a question that needs to be referred to Melissa, as unfortunately she can't be here. She's actually got COVID. It's quite poorly. So if we can defer that, and I'll, through Mandy, the clerk, we'll address that and ask Melissa to respond to you as a committee. I don't want to say anything that might devalue what Melissa and her team are actually doing to, as I say, to articulate that message clearly to our communities. In terms of, I think your next question was around about, Councillor, around about Connect and whether it's or it's not up to date. I will put my hand on heart, and my page isn't up to date. My role has recently changed, and I suppose I'm quite pleased in saying this. I actually notified the officer responsible for updating Connect on my page, but I take your point that it's not just Connect, and I think some of our web pages need a total refresh. So I think that's something that needs to be fed back to senior management personally, and ensure for us as corporate managers, or me for corporate managers, that my Connect page, intranet page, is up to date, which it will be within the next few days, and that was subject to some of my roles changing. And I think that can be spread right across the other offices to make sure that it's up to date. And also from a wider perspective, certainly web pages need to be looked at. There's nothing worse in trying to find something on our web page and you can't find it, or it's out of date, because that's frustrating, and it's in terms of our reputation, that's not particularly good. So I think we can take that away, Councillor, and perhaps raise that through our senior management to disseminate that message. Sorry, and your last bit was on communication. So yeah, we talk about what's our successes and perhaps not so much about not so well. I think I'm not in a position as the head of audit to answer that question, but I think maybe that can go back to the head of communications and the director, Sarah Wilcock, who is responsible for communications, and feed that back and perhaps get a response again to this committee as a whole, if that's okay with you.
Just particularly on the intranet, because at the top of page 68, where it talks about that, and it says these are all available, best practice, all this information is regularly monitored, but it isn't, because you look to see what the council's priorities are or work going on, and you see things saying last updated 2021 or whenever it is. And when we ask for answers on this, we are told, oh, ignore that bit, it's on somewhere else, kind of thing. Well, that's, and my concern is I wouldn't be confident in saying this is accurate, because my own personal experience is that it isn't. So, and I am concerned that we're not, as an organisation, ensuring that the information both internally and externally is accurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reborn. I saw various nods then, and I also hear from feedback from customers, constituents, that it's not brilliant. Does anyone else want to say a word on this subject? Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would just second exactly what Councillor Eburn said. Yes, essentially, when I've spoken to a lot of residents, that when they go on the website, they find that a lot of information is up to date. And I know on even our pages, when you go onto the sort of paper website and you look at our pages, there's a lot of information about me on sort of like my regulatory interest that I've updated and needs to be added on there. And some of that is from about a year ago, and it's still not up to date. So. And obviously you can see on there when it was last updated, and I think I can see that it was last updated sort of when we were elected, essentially. So I think just across the board, obviously there's bits on all parts of the website that just needs to be updated, and I think, yeah, it is very important that is thorough, because obviously when we're giving this information out to residents and it comes back and it's not up to date, it reflects badly on us as well. So, yeah, no, that is very important, so I just wanted to second the points there.
Okay, well, that will be minuted, and I imagine Sarah Wilcox will be contacted. I find just difficulty of getting through just general connection is an issue as well, so we'll deal with that. Councillor Muller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also totally agree with what Councillor Eburn has said. I think it's really, really important that the internet is up to date, so that members of the public can see exactly what is happening sort of in live time, etc. Really, really important. Otherwise, wrong information goes out, which is not good, and it doesn't reflect well on the council if that happens. So yeah, totally support what Councillor Eburn has said. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I can see various other nods. And regard to financial things, Mandy has noted, and we will that will go through to Melissa, who will answer the committee personally, we've been told. Yeah, she's a bit sick at the moment, but when she gets out of bed and is running again, we'll enact that. Councillor Norman.
Sorry, no, just to come back on that, just another point as well. With the council's social media presence, I find that depending on which social media you use, the information differs. I don't find that they're often concurrent with each other, if that makes sense. So obviously, if some people are using Facebook, they'll get certain information. If some are using Twitter, they'll get others. So just lining that up, just to make sure obviously they're both kind of the same, if that makes sense. Just because I know sort of equally people that use just one or the other. So obviously it's just a good way of getting the information out there. So just something to bear in mind, that was all. I'm not sure if that's a question for here or communications team, but I just thought I'd just say in the meeting. Thank you.
If I could just come back, is it a different message you're saying that's
Not
on there?
message, but it's more, sorry, that some things are put on Facebook and some things are put on Twitter. It's like they're not different, it's just like they're not updated at the same time and they don't always have the same things on there. So it's, yeah, it was more that point. It's not the information is different if it's on there, if it's on both, but it's just, yeah, Facebook will get some updates, Twitter will get some, and they usually line up, but not always, so it's just something to monitor.
So updated at different times is the problem, as you see it. Summer's out of date, you're saying? Yes. Yeah, okay. Well, that will be highlighted as well. Any other points or questions before we go to debate? No, okay. Well, the governance statement, it encompasses everything, and I'm really happy with it. If we can live up to all that, it'll be fantastic. Whether we do or not is, it may be a moot point. We've got to try hard, and sometimes there's difficulties, but happy to accept a proposal to move forward with that, because that's the basis of what we do, and it's absolutely excellent. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if you're making a proposal for the recommendations on page 39, I'm more than happy to second those.
Yeah, well, I will propose. So unless there's other debate, we'll go to the vote. Councillor Eborn, yes?
Thank you, Chair. I note that the recommendation says for 3.3 further that approval of any significant amendments be delegated, blah, 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 to the, but the officer mentioned isn't actually, I mean, I know you can watch this on YouTube, but isn't actually in this meeting, and I'm not particularly happy with it. I'm pleased there's points about realistic budgets and so on, so forth being made, but the issues about how we show budget setting by the community, the intranet website, and the issue about communications, unless I've got assurance that those are going to be looked at before this is signed off. It says it's going to be signed off by the leader of each council. Then I don't want to have to vote against it, but I don't want to vote in favour of it unless unless I have assurance that those issues are being picked up. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I assume we could give you that insurance. Is that correct, John? If it's noted and we've actioned somebody to look at these things, is that progress enough for you?
Yeah, I think if I, have assurance, I wouldn't want to then go and look at a final version and see nothing's changed, is what, because we have all made comments. Thank you.
If I can just interject, Chair, what I can do with, obviously, Mandy's help with the recording of the notes, I can go back to those relevant officers and ask them to either clarify or amend the word in such a way that we will be looking at that moving forward, and that can be a revised AGS. So my intention is, once that's signed off, if you're happy with that, Councillor, I can then get the two leaders, obviously, and Arthur then to sign it. And my intention is then to redistribute not just to this committee, but the whole of the councils, because I think it's such an important document that all members should have a read and understand that. So if I go back and start to ask those questions of those relevant officers, bearing in mind the discussions that we've had today, hopefully they can make those initial amendments. I'll speak to Emily when I see her. She's on leave at the moment as well, and then we can get that signed off if that's satisfied for this committee's purposes.
Thank you, Chair, as well.
Yes, it's either that or propose an amendment, but this seems a good way of doing it, I would think. Okay, thank you. If no other points, we'll move to the vote. Mandy, please.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress on the app. Councillor Norman? Thank you. Chair, that's 8 votes for, so that's unanimous.
Thank you. Right, thank you, everybody. And now we do move to paper 2133, the annual Treasury report. Sue Farmer, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the position for the outturn for the financial year 2021-22. It provides details of the performance, effects of decisions taken during that period, and confirms compliance with the Council's Treasury Management Policy. The report explains in more detail the factors affecting the strategy and activities, including the regulatory framework, economic conditions, interest rate and liquidity risk. Major issues over the period were the economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic, the war in Ukraine, higher inflation and higher interest rates. CPI was 0.7% in March 2021, but thereafter began to steadily increase. Surges in wholesale gas and electricity prices led to CPI for February 2022 as 6.2% year on year, up from the 5.5% in the previous month. Bank rate was 0.1% at the beginning of the reporting period. However, to combat rising inflation, the Bank of England increased it to 0.75% by March 2022. The government's furlough scheme had insulated the labour market from the worst effects of the pandemic. Having peaked at 5.2% in December 2020, unemployment continued to fall, and the labour market data for the 3 months to January 2022 showed the unemployment rate at 3.9%. More specifically for our two councils, both councils continue to hold additional cash from government grants received relating to COVID-19. This has increased Treasury investment activity during the year. Regarding banking activities, both councils operated within the daily bank limits, except for one occasion when BABA exceeded its daily limit, as mentioned in Appendix C, paragraph 4.1. Each council has decreased its debt, BABA by 6.7 million and Mid-Suffolk by 7.2 million. Mid-Suffolk lent a further 4.5 million to Gateway 14. All investment activities undertaken were in accordance with the approved counterparty list, except for one occasion when Mid-Suffolk exceeded its investment limits in 2 of its money market funds by 500,000 each, as mentioned in Appendix C, paragraph 4.1. The position was resolved the next day. The process notes included overall limits, but not individual fund limits. So the process has been revised and updated to include individual fund balances as part of the approval process. The Council's investment activities, including average returns, can be found in Appendix C of the report. Both councils are compliant with the upper limits for interest rate exposure. The investment activity undertaken for the year was done so in priority order of security and liquidity over yield, as prescribed in the Treasury Management Strategy. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and if there's any I can't answer today, then then Melissa will get back to you as soon as she's able to after the committee.
I presume the general rise in interest rates is going to be detrimental for us, I presume. Is it just at the moment it's continuing to go up? I know we earn money, but we also pay for what we've borrowed. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, the sort of gap between the interest receivable and interest payable will continue, yes.
Okay. Questions from the floor, please. Councillor Rebohm.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of things, please. One, the Prudential Code changed a couple of years ago, and we've chosen not to adopt it until 2023-24. Why not? This is to do with the, government changes they've made with regards to PWLB borrowing and so on. So why do we not just adopt it for this financial year? And I appreciate this financial year started, but why do we not do that? On the environmental implications of this report, it refers to recommending that the Cabinet pushes its fund managers to filter investments in respect of ESG, as in environmental, social and governance considerations. So I just wonder what we mean by pushing kind of thing there. And finally, third question, if I may, when we talk about trading companies, paragraph 2.7 refers to the, sorry, not 2.7, 2.6 refers to the holdings companies that where we're holding equity. And just could you advise where the scrutiny of those holdings companies will be and how that's communicated, how the information in 2.6 is communicated to the full council? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ebon. The middle one, Sue, is something that I sort of did ask and query about in the briefing as well, and would have done if Rachel hadn't got in first. So maybe, if you can, some reassurance on that position, please.
Thank you. Yes, well, the Prudential Code changed the 2023-24. Obviously, the next strategy that we prepare will be for 23-24. So we will take into account all the changes in the Prudential Code. We did acknowledge that, the changes in the PWB arrangements regarding borrowing for commercial activities. We completed the investment in CIFCO in 2020-21, so we're not doing any new investment in CIFCO, so we won't be falling foul of the Prudential Code there. So we kind of have adopted that part of it, if you like, so the rest will be covered by the next strategy that we prepare for 2023-24.
Can I just come in there? Sorry, because in that case, why did we not just adopt it for 22-23? Why wait another year? If it's out there another, what was the problem in not adopting it?
Okay, I think the rest of the changes were around reporting, and I think some of the reporting there'll be more reporting. So it's more preparing, more sort of an administration point of view, really. So sort of a practical point of view, if you like. So yeah, yes, thank you. As regards the position on sort of the ESG investments, we currently have the investments in the pooled funds, and we try to diversify across various areas. The sort of CCLA, for example, this is the first year where we've actually had a valuation that's actually slightly more than the investment that we put in originally. But the CCLA is a property fund. The other funds are multi-asset funds, so they are spread wider. At the moment, they're still below the investment level. So it wouldn't be a good idea at the moment to pull out of those investments. The primary aim of those investments was actually to generate, income to support the revenue budget, which they are doing. So the position is under, monitoring, constant monitoring, really. So yes, we're subject to all these external factors. So. Do you want to?
If I can just come back on that, I wasn't, I know previously in this committee's discussed pulling out of particular funds. I wasn't suggesting that. I'm just saying that I just wasn't sure what the words pushing meant in that paragraph. We're pushing fund managers. Does that mean they're assessing them very regularly? Does that mean these councils have said we want to, we've got an ultimate aim? What does that mean? Is what I was trying to get to. Thank you.
I think it just means to keep monitoring it and at the right time to review it and take necessary decisions. Thank you. And your third question regarding the trading companies, I'll just, is that in Appendix Could you point me to the page, please?
Yes, it's page 106, paragraph 2.6, where it refers to the equity in the Suffolk holdings. And my question was whether, how is that, you know, obviously we see certificate business plans, but how is that the holding company equity issues communicated to council, and what is the scrutiny of that fund, holding? Thank you.
Yeah. The board reports to committee members, and even one of the recent internal audits has been around the company side, from, you know, the council side, looking at how the companies perform and their governance arrangements and everything else.
Puzzled about Rachel's middle question. We do have quite a bit of money in spread bonds, and some of that is in maybe fossil fuel companies or things that aren't particularly environmentally friendly, and there's been questions raised of how ethical that is at the present time. So that was the bones of the question. We've got spread bonds in lots of things, including maybe some things that maybe it's not good to invest in at the moment, but we would have to take the whole lot out to get it out of a certain percentage of it. That is the problem. And I think Rachel was asking, are we really pushing or just waiting? And you know, I've quite a strong view about that. I think maybe we should push a bit harder, but we'll visit that another time, in fairness to Sue. There's a difference between pushing and just waiting, and some of them may never get up to what we invested, so they may never come back to what, or take a long time, in which case there's a bit of uncomfortableness with that amongst some of our committee. Just to bring everybody up to date with what we're actually talking about. Councillor Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I'm very new to this particular subject. I've a background in business, so when I see a snapshot like this, I obviously appreciate a lot of work has gone into it. However, it would be helpful if it's possible to give at least the previous year or possibly two, so that we can see what the trend is, because seeing a snapshot like this without the background, it's difficult to see where the organisation is heading. So my first question. Second one is off at a tangent. Do we hedge against interest rate rises or not?
No.
Well, that's simple.
I mean, we invest or borrow at the best rates we can at the time. We use Treasury advisors, Arlene Close, and brokers as well, who are, you know, are sort of commissioned to find the best rates for us. But that's as far as we go.
Mm-hmm. And then, sort of a general observation, there seems to be quite a difference between what the budgeted expenditure was and what the actual expenditure is on a good number of things by quite a significant margin, like millions of pounds. So I was wondering why that is.
Okay. The borrowing that we do is often to support like the capital programme, that kind of thing, and there's been various delays in the capital programme due to supply issues and, you know, the general economic situation that we're in. So that has impacted on what we've needed to borrow and what we've been able to invest. We've had government grants come in, which we've been able to invest. We had some come in right at the end of March, so we were able to invest that or reduce our borrowing. So that can impact on, you know, how we've originally budgeted or how it looks against the budget. As regards the sort of interest receivable and payable, because we haven't had such a significant capital programme, then we haven't had to borrow so much, therefore we haven't had so much interest to pay. And likewise, sort of the interest receivable, some of the returns haven't been as good as we had expected, so there's difference in the budget, or created budget variances in that regard.
So this difference between budget and actual, if you look at the, I think it's page 29, for the HRA in Mid-Suffolk, we're budgeting roughly 40 million and we've actually spent 14. So that's 26 million difference. Why? I probably got the different document, but anyway.
Could you point me to the paragraph, perhaps?
It's in a table, I'm afraid.
Okay, which table number?
Appendix E. I have it as page 29, but I may have the wrong document, I guess.
Appendix E.
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you.
Is that the trading companies? Is that one of them? Page 108, the interest.
117.
117.
So my concern is that we may not be doing as much for our tenants as we had intended.
Seeing.
Yes, it is, yes.
It's around the HRA sort of development pipeline and the capital programme, you know, the new build and the acquisitions that we had planned. Some of those schemes were delayed. There were issues around, you know, materials and supplies, deliveries. There were also, I think, some sort of, you know, around planning issues around some of the schemes, so they didn't advance as quickly as we had expected. I mean, they're obviously still ongoing schemes, but, you know, that it's just delayed. So therefore, they, you know, that's reflected in a lower than budget expenditure.
Thank you.
So just a follow-up to that, Sue. So that money that's not spent, that's invested in short-term investments, is it?
Yes, wherever we can get the best rates. Yes.
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 So it's, yeah, we're aware of that, Councillor Davis. It's the money is always doing something, even sometimes overnight. Is that still correct? It goes somewhere to be invested, even for a very, very short term. So, what is the sort of rate on a sort of a weak investment? It must be virtually minus, isn't it? Or has it now gone up with the increase?
It has gone up a little bit. Yes. Yes. As the bank rate has been increasing, then our investment rates have gone up a little bit as well. Yes.
Yes, we did deal with this, Councillor Davis, at another time, and every penny that we have in our possession is trying to earn, you know, a dollar somewhere at all the time. You know, I'm not saying that Sue sits up playing the stock market, but it's always put somewhere safe and where it is earning a little. So that is very good to know. Right.
I appreciate that, Chair, but my concern is one where we may have a programme to upgrade or
yes.
maintain the properties under the HRA, and we have discontented residents who are expecting something to happen that hasn't happened. So I'm confident that we invest the money we have
Yes.
wisely, no problem. It's the other end of it. That's my concern.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I think it always happens, but maybe not in time. In this sort of market, it's a bit like that, I'm afraid. But yes, as long as we've got assurance that everyone's working to make it happen, that's probably the best we can do. Okay, before we go to debate, any more questions on clarification on what we have before us? No, let's move to debate then, please. We're looking for several proposers and seconded on this, so any further comments? Councillor Davis?
I'd just like to say thank you for switching from short-term to medium-term investments in mid-Suffolk. That was good rates fix. Thank you.
I'll feed that back to the team. Thank you.
Anyone wants to enter into a debate or any comments on the papers? No? Well, I think then we ought to move to proposed and seconded, and there are 3 papers, that's correct, isn't it, to be...
Yes, Chair. So we will be having 3 votes on this item.
Yep.
So recommendations 3.1 and 3.2 is for everybody to vote
Yes.
on. So I will need a proposer and a seconder for that
Yeah.
first.
Well, I would propose to propose on the first one and look for a seconder, which can be from anywhere, mid-Suffolk.
Councillor Muller has seconded, I think.
Anyone wish to second that? Oh,
Yeah,
yes, Councillor Mola, yep.
Okay, so that vote is now open for everybody to vote on. Sorry, Councillor Norman. Thank you. Okay, so that was 8 votes for, so that's unanimous. So the next vote is for recommendation 3.3, which is for Labour members only. So if I could have a proposer, Councillor Nunn.
Councillor Nunn, thank you very much.
And a second.
Another Labour councillor, Councillor Norman, thank you.
Okay, so that vote is now open for Labour members only, please. Sorry, Councillor Norman. Thank you. So that is, just make sure I've got everybody's votes, that's 4 votes for, so that is unanimous. And then recommendation 3.4 is for mid-Suffolk members. If I can have a proposer, Councillor Muller, thank you.
Councillor Muller, thank you. And Councillor Davis to second. Thank you both.
Okay, so that vote is now open for mid-Suffolk members only. And that is 4 votes for, so that's unanimous as well, Chair. That's all the votes.
Okay, thank you everybody. And the last item on the agenda today, 2134, the forward plan, which is for noting or adding to, or if anyone feels strongly about anything. Councillor Reborn, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered about if we were looking at commissioning and procurement at some point, because I know there's been a lot of changes to that. I don't know how that fits in, because I understand there's been some changes and looking forward to forward planning in terms of what needs to be done. I just wondered whether that was something that would be coming to this committee. Thank you, Chair.
It's not on here at all at the moment, is it? But you would like it to come on. Is that something, Sue, that you could answer? Is that your sort of field, or? No.
Sorry, I don't know. Would we know anything?
Pardon?
I can take that to Minister.
I think, Chair, that it was
Yes,
something that Melissa Evans had been looking at, and if she'd been here, obviously I could have asked her
Yes.
directly, but because it's been raised as over time as an issue, I just wasn't sure whether it was expected to come here, but if someone can just check that, that would be helpful, thank you.
Yes.
Chair, I'll take that to Melissa outside of the meeting and get
Yes,
her to
okay.
comment.
Is there a particular issue with that, Councillor Eborn, that you want clarity on?
I think it's just the fact, Chair, that because it's been looked at and had been identified, I think, well, probably more than a year ago, a couple of years ago, that it needed that there needed to be some changes in the way that it was being done and so on, and that there was a project to look at that. It was just, given that is quite intrinsic to kind of the finances and the processes within the organisations, I just thought that you know, whether either, if it had been Melissa here, we could have had an update, or I could have asked her directly, but if that is some area, you know, and obviously it's been raised in internal audit as well, so whether it's something that we would be looking at.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eborn. We'll get an opinion, and if it needs to come to this committee, it will do, I would think. I think Melissa will probably write to us as a committee on these matters that we've struggled a bit on, and we'll get a view well in time for the next meeting. Any other points on the forward plan? No, everybody's happy. There's some quite big, beefy bits of work coming up for the rest of the electoral year, so we will be busy. Okay, well, I think that brings the meeting to a close. Thank you, Sue and John, for attending and for being help. I'm sure we all will wish Melissa a speedy road to recovery. And the next meeting is on the 26th of September.